modifications real quick. Okay, so now in between missions you can use scrap to modify your drones. All right, and how do you do that? So it's interesting. So there's a new thing that we've added. Every upgrade, what you can do is you can repair the upgrade if it's starting to show errors. So throughout the game, your upgrades are going to break down. All right, but as they break down, you can normally they'll error and they'll break, and that's my way of forcing you to shuffle your hand and use new upgrades. But what we're adding in here is the ability to repair an upgrade that's erroring before it breaks. Once it breaks, it's kind of broken. And so I guess the question here for me as the designer is, all right, before you were forcing them to shuffle their hands, and now you're giving them a loophole. You're giving them a way out of that. Because if they have a favorite upgrade, instead of just having to deal with the fact that they don't have it anymore, they can continue to repair it. And that's true. But it's expensive. So, for example, it costs 10 scrap to repair an errored upgrade, all right? So if something is super precious to you, you would pay that. Because, for example, if I scrap one of these upgrades, it's only going to give me, I think, 3 or 4 scrap. So you're going to have to throw away like 2 or 3 upgrades just to repair one of your existing upgrades, which means that's a pretty hard decision to make. So, for example, I have 2 motion sensors right here, okay? I have the motion sensor here, and I have a motion sensor here, so that's redundant. So I have a choice. I could scrap one of them, and then knowing, and let's say it's super important to me, knowing that it's super important, I can say, hey, when it starts to error, I can always fix it. But it might make more sense to keep on 2 motion upgrades, because when one of them breaks, instead of costing 5 to fix it, I can then scrap that thing, get scrap out of it, and then switch to this motion sensor, which is completely working and it's brand new, and it didn't cost me 5 scrap. However, it might be that right now I want the scrap for other things. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to go ahead and scrap this extra motion sensor. And as you can see, now I have 3 scrap. So what can I do with that 3 scrap? Well, there's a few things. So you know how I can fix things, right? I can fix problems with an upgrade, but check this out. Here's the shield. We can repair it if it's starting to error, which it's not because it's brand new. Or we can repair its health points by 100 for 1 scrap. So as you can see, the shield has 500 health points, and every time you get hit, that's going to go down, and eventually when it reaches 0, the shield is useless, and it's basically broken. But there's also this option to make it recharge, but it has lower health. So normally, here, let me show you. So normally I would drive around and my shield would have 500 HP, and as it got hurt, it would just go down and stay down. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to invest 5 scrap. Actually, here, I'm going to have to scrap something else. I'm going to get rid of my interface, very sadly. Hope that's the right one. Okay, so now I have 6 scrap. So I'm going to do, and I'm going to take this shield, and see how it's 500 out of 500? When I add this to the queue and I execute it, it's going to drop to 100 out of 100. So now the shield is 1/5 as strong, but it regenerates. It'll regenerate back to 100. So after I've done 500 damage plus to it, then I've kind of made it worthwhile, right? And it also might work for, like, I go into a room, I start getting attacked, I go out of the room, I shut the door, and then I let it recharge. So it's just a slightly different strategy. Actually, if I can scrap something else... Here, actually, I'm going to cheat a little bit, as I always do. I'm going to create some ship upgrades. And I'm going to go back into the modifications now. And I'm going to scrap some ship upgrades. I'm going to scrap this ship surveyor, which is going to give me a whole bunch of scrap. And I'm going to scrap this transporter, which is going to give me a whole bunch of scrap. So these are normally ship upgrades that I would have gotten, and now they're perfectly working, and I'm throwing them away just to get scrap. But if you look at the probe, we've added that we can increase the probe's health points. And what this does is that normally enemies into a room, they kill it. And that's how I know that there's an enemy there. But with this, they won't necessarily kill it. So I could possibly use it to herd the enemy because they'll keep attacking it. as it moves through the rooms. I also have the ability to give the probe stealth, so the enemies won't attack it and destroy it, and I can continue to map out the whole ship with my probe. The only problem is I'll have no idea if there are enemies in there or not. So this is kind of interesting. Do you guys have a choice? Do you guys want to do one or the other? Why don't we increase its HP and like use it as this moving lure, and we'll see what happens with that. So I'm gonna add that. So now we have the souped up probe. And then finally, one thing I just want to show is that as you use up, we have 4 out of 4 traps, and if we set 4 traps and we detonate them, the trap upgrade becomes useless. So which is okay, and then you scrap it. But what we've done here is we've say, hey, what if you could refill the trap? So for 2 scrap, you can add 2 more mines. And again, this is a trade-off. Like this trap upgrade might break eventually, so you're refilling it. But if it's the only upgrade you have, and this happened to me, I haven't played with these modifications a lot because they've been kind of not as useful, but I was playing a game, and right from the beginning, I only had so many upgrades, and I had a trap, and I used up a bunch of them. But then I knew that as long as I could get enough upgrades and get enough scrap, I could refill those traps. And it becomes this kind of trade-off where you're paying money to restock, but if it's the only upgrade you have, then that's worthwhile. If it's not the only upgrade you have, then maybe you don't do that. Maybe you don't bother. Maybe you just throw it away once it's out of traps. And so by giving this currency of scrap, I think basically what I'm doing is I'm allowing players to be more flexible and play in a greater variety of ways, and also making it so that if they're in extreme cases, they can make decisions. Like it might be that I found this really cool remote power control or this long-range scanner that could help me map the universe, but I don't care because all I have right now is a trap upgrade, and it's out of traps, and so I'm gonna scrap my long-range scanner to create more traps. It allows the player to be flexible. Hopefully it won't backfire on us and make it so that people can just only play in the one way they want to play and stuff like that, which if people want to play that way, that's fine. But hopefully we can make it all balance out. So anyway, so now that I've yapped all about that, why don't I play?